There's so much to talk about in this game. Boston College lost to Rutgers on Saturday. We're going to go into our second day with Mitch Wolf, going into the nitty gritty of what we saw, what he saw, and breaking down some of the ins and outs of another disappointing loss for the Boston College Eagles. All that and more on today's Locked On Boston College.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, this is Locked On Boston. Your host AJ Black. With me today is Mitch Wolf. We're discussing Saturday's loss to Rutgers. This is day two. We went into a lot of the big game moments from on yesterday's show and some of the big picture things, but there's still so much more meat on this bone. Mitch, how's it going?
Doing better today. I'm going to try to speak a little slower than yesterday. Yesterday, I was trying to get as much information as I could off my chest for the people. So today, I'll try to speak a little more slowly to give some more nuanced analysis.
And I know a few people on Twitter were saying that we sounded down and dejected. I didn't get that sense yesterday. Did you?
I was just trying to speak as quickly as possible just to get, to cover as much as I could. I mean, I was definitely frustrated and, sad about the result, but I don't know, maybe, we'll see.
All right. So, we talked, if you have not heard yesterday's episode, go back and listen to that. But today we're going to get into Phil Jurkovec. And a lot has been said, watching him in the stadium. I sit next to my father-in-law. He's like, yeah, he should have been throwing more interceptions than he did. He looked inconsistent. He didn't look like himself. Mitch, you went back and watched it again today, and you could talk a little bit about that feature in a little bit, but what did you see about Phil that concerned you, made you feel okay about the future of him, Eagles?
I thought Jurkovec was pretty good, honestly. I thought that the new offense was actually really good. I really enjoyed it. There's a ton of motion, a lot of new concepts that BC really hasn't used. They spent, I think, over 90% of their snaps in shotgun or pistol, which is could not be further from the Frank Cignetti offense. I liked there was so much pre-snap motion, trading guys from one side of the formation to the other. They had a lot of personnel diversity in terms of, they one play. I mean, they didn't have a ton of different tight ends, but one drive they would have like 6 offensive linemen and George Takacs, and in a few plays they would have Jeremiah Franklin and Taji Johnson as the quote tight ends. So I thought that was really cool. I thought some of the play designs were good, but with reference specifically to Jurkovec, I think obviously he made mistakes, and that's the thing about him is he is kind of a reckless, aggressive quarterback at times. I think that he got a little greedy with that first interception, trying to hit Zay on that crossfield comeback. And I think maybe he just didn't see the sinking defender underneath. So that's why he kind of flattened the throw, and he might have just not seen him, which that happens. It makes sense. I'm not too worried about that. The second interception was definitely bad. Like, he stared down the receiver, kind of had a lazy delivery, and then Zay fell down. Obviously that's part of it. But, I think that even if Zay hadn't fallen down, he would have gotten hit pretty hard, or the defender would have broken up the pass regardless.
Yep.
But his throw, it was one of the earlier drives, but his throw over the middle to Takacs, where he just got over linebacker's fingertips, that was incredible. The touchdowns, all the touchdown throws were great. The second one to Zay was really great because he stood in the pocket, read the progression through, and BC ran that play a few different times, but with guys kind of moved around in different spots. But they liked that concept a lot, and I think they threw to each route. So that was, it's good to see that kind of diversity. But there was one thing that Herzlich brought up, and I think this might be why we see Jurkovec struggle in the quick game so much. There was a play later in the game. It was a third down, and Jurkovec tried to throw to Jaden Williams, who's running a drag route underneath, but he threw behind him and high, so he couldn't really reach back and grab it, and they turned the ball, and they had to punt the ball away, I think. And Herzlich made a great point about how Jurkovec just didn't move his feet, and he even said, it's probably just because he's, this is late in the game, he's probably tired, he's tired of getting hit, he just wants to get the ball out as quickly as possible, so he doesn't reset his feet towards the receiver, and that causes the ball to be behind and high. And there were a few times in this game where Jurkovec threw to guys running really short routes, kind of right in front of him, and he would fire the pass really high. He missed Garwo high once. One time he threw it to Takacs, and Takacs caught it, but it was still a super high throw and just had a lot of velocity when it didn't need to. So I think that the footwork is something that I want to, maybe go back watch some of his older games and see if that was also a problem. But I think just kind of getting more consistent with that footwork is something that he could improve on moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, so go back. You brought up, and this is kind of going on a little bit of a tangent, but like you mentioned the offense and you liked the way it looked. I see a lot of folks out there bashing this offense, saying, John McNulty's not the right choice, blah, blah, blah. Is that just, and I'm not bashing the people who say this kind of stuff, but is that kind of just, it's more understanding the nuance of what they're doing, and from the sidelines, it's not as easy to see what they're doing that's different than what Cignetti did.
I think that could be part of it. I think so. Like the one thing we saw a lot of people say was, "Oh, why didn't they throw more screens?" And like I said yesterday, there's probably only X amount of screens in the playbook, and it's not like it's not like if you just throw screens, the pass rush is going to turn off. Like they're going to start looking for the screens more, which again, it will help, but it's not a cure all for the offense. And I think I definitely agree they could have used it more, but it's not something you can just spam, keep running the same kind of plays, and it'll just magically solve everything. And I saw some people say like, oh, like why didn't they do more end arounds? It's like, well, again, we saw like Clemson tried that once or twice where they tried to do another sweep and they got blown up. If you keep spamming the same type of plays, the defense is going to adjust and they'll stop it. And I mean, even on one of the later drives, they went with a fly sweep to Zay. Next play, they ran a little bubble screen to him. So they were doing that kind of stuff. I think people just kind of got lost in the interceptions and just the result of the game. And again, I think it's at this point, does have to be a process of a results thing. And I think what the big takeaway from the offense is you saw an offense coordinator that was willing to do a lot more to make this offense easier for the skill players, at least, in that he wasn't, making Phil go under center and run these hard play action passes where you're kind of just expecting the offensive line to hold up and your guys just get open and it's that or nothing. I think these new plays, and again, sometimes it was to the detriment of the pass protection scheme because you had a lot more guys out in the pattern. But you saw like there was one play where Jurkovec dropped back and nobody's open downfield, but he hit the back coming out of the backfield. They didn't gain many yards, but there's just a lot more options out there. And I think that's something that Cignetti's offense struggled with, is that essentially if the number one read wasn't there, they weren't really able to get to the next read. So I think that this offense, I think it is going to be good moving forward. I think just, there were like, I have this big tweet thread today about how there was a miscommunication between Zay and Phil. And that's the thing, is like, it's week one, there's going to be some mess ups, and that's typically why teams schedule FCS teams for week one. So you can kind of work those kinks out before your schedule really begins. Unfortunately, BC scheduled a Power 5 team that came to play that day, and they played quite well.
All right. In a moment, we're going to continue on the offensive side of the ball and look at a new player that had a big game. We're going to talk about our favorite position here on Locked On Boston College. But before we do that, I want to tell you about the easiest and most fun way to spice up your season. It's Underdog Fantasy and their pick'em game for college football. Just look for your favorite Eagles, pick whatever you think they'll end up with, higher or lower than that number in that week's game, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Underdog keeps it super simple with their easy-to-use website and mobile apps. But pick between 2 and 5 players for your pick and flip, get all your picks right, and you'll take home some cold hard cash. It's simple to get started. Just head to underdogfantasy.com or download the app. Sign up with promo code Locked On, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. Again, that's $100 free. You're not going to get that from any other books. Again, go to Underdog Fantasy with promo code Locked On. This is AJ Black here with Locked On Boston College. If you're listening live right now, I want to again remind you that on Eagle Insider, we have a special deal for 75% off an annual pass. I believe this ends at midnight tonight. So if you're listening on the podcast tomorrow, I believe it might be too late, but I know some folks listen to this in the evening. You're going to get the whole year for $25. Can't beat that. So head over to Eagle Insider and make sure you sign up right now. We'll give you premium access to recruiting news. I'm over here getting pinged on all sorts of new recruiting things that you're going to want to know about. We give, detailed analysis on games, all sorts of good stuff that you're not going to get anywhere else. All right. So Mitch, we're talking tight, and this is, Chris, our listener. This is his favorite topic, because he has a great sense of humor. And George Takacs, I thought I was very impressed with his play. Even more so than Trey Berry. And Trey Berry came out and had that big catch against Colgate and, leapt over a defender. But I thought consistently Takacs looked like a guy that's going to be a good target for Phil moving forward.
I think it was his first catch where Herzlich remarked that he was wearing number 80, which was last worn by Hunter Long. And he said that the coaching staff, when talking to the media, said they really love Takacs because they think he's basically like Hunter Long, but faster and more athletic. And I think you could see that just the way he was being used I think you saw him like line up out wide as a wide receiver, decent. Let me see. I have his snaps up actually. He took 7 snaps as the farthest wide out receiver. 7 out of his 43 snaps or 40 snaps where he was a receiver. 15 snaps in the slot, 19 inline. So using him all over the field, which is really cool to see. But you saw him like getting downfield on vertical routes. And like I said, he had that great catch over the middle where Phil placed the ball perfectly. He was targeted 11 times, 7 catches, 84 yards. He did have the one drop on the final drive, which was bad. I think one of the other ones was where Phil threw to him deep down the sideline, and I think they could have called pass interference, but they didn't. It was kind of a contested catch throw. I can't remember the other 2 targets that he didn't catch, but really good stuff, making contested catches over the middle. Didn't get a ton of run after catch opportunities, but was useful as a blocker in space. They used him as kind of the lead blocker in one of those Zay screens and another one on a fly sweep. So, the funny thing about that throw over the middle to Phil is they after the play, they showed him getting up and kind of going back to the huddle, and Phil kind of ran up to him, and Takacs gave him a really hard headbutt. Like, football players do that to celebrate, but it kind of knocked Phil back. And I was like, oh, buddy, you can't be doing that to the quarterback on the second drive. But I mean, yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised by how Takacs played, because I thought he was going to be good, but I thought he played extremely well. And I think that the only downside is I think that because of how much the offensive line struggled, I think they're going to have to keep him in to pass block a little bit more in the future. Like, he only had 1 snap in this game where he was pass blocking out of his 43 total snaps. So I think you're going to see that number increase a lot this week and in the coming weeks. And maybe it'll go back down as the offensive line gets more comfortable together. But yeah, really impressed by his play.
Well, that was an interesting thing that came up in Sunday's media availability with Halfley, was he talked about Spencer Witter's injury. And he said that Witter had been out. And I know a lot of fans are like, who cares? It's Spencer Witter. He's a tight end too. But if you're talking about pass blocking, I feel like Witter might be a good substitution for that. And they, Halfley also brought up that does like going with the 1-2 offense. So going with 1 halfback, 2 tight ends.
Yeah. I remember that quote. Halfley, he said him and McNulty love going with 12 and 13 personnel. And I think that, and again, they kind of got, and this is why I liked the offense, because they got creative with ways to get into that personnel. So one play they had Takacs in line, and they also had Jeremiah Franklin and Tajee Johnson aligned as tight ends. So, I like that creativity. You saw Hans Lillis come in as a Y tight end, do some blocking. A lot of times they brought on Dwayne Alec, put him at guard, and then moved Jack Conley to he was technically a tight end. So, again, I like that creative part of the offense. But yeah, I mean, if Witter can get back healthy, he can be an asset in pass protection. They can get back to the 12 personnel and, keeping that extra blocker. And because, I mean, frankly, if you've got a 12 personnel and you keep Witter in, your other receivers are Zay, Jalen Gill, probably, and George Takacs. And I think that those 3 receivers are good enough where you don't need to be like, all right, we need to get another receiver out in the pattern. Those guys. And again, this kind of was my previous issue with Signetti's offense, but that was with a different offensive line. But I think at least for the meantime, those 3 receivers, you can find enough ways to get those guys open as the primary receivers in a pattern.
Now, Mitch, I'm going to put you on the spot here because you had some great tweets earlier. You went back and looked at the game and talked about the offensive line, and you looked at some of the issues that popped up. What were some of the things that you saw? I know we talked about this yesterday, but now that you had a second chance to look at it, some of the things that popped up to you.
So this is the big thing, and I think this is kind of a silver lining, or at least that's what I'm interpreting as. Maybe I'm looking for maybe there's something there, and I'm just hoping that it's there, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But the issue that I saw was the bulk of the issues came from the interior offensive line, the two guards in the center, not being able to properly pass rushers off between each other, especially later in the drop back. There was one specific stunt, which is when where the defensive line is lined up and one lineman kind of crashes diagonally crashes diagonally one way, and then the defensive lineman next to him kind of wraps around behind him and then goes where the other defensive lineman was. It's a way to confuse the offensive lineman's protection. And Rutgers ran the same one at least twice, I think maybe 3 times, and then they used similar ones out of slightly different formational looks. But those blitzes and stunts really confused the 3 guys on the interior because they weren't sure really how to pass them off between each other. And this thing might have been why, it kind of been an underrated aspect of the BC offensive line in the last 2 years, is they had so much familiarity with each other that they knew how to pass those stunts and blitzes off well between each other. This group really struggled with that, and that is something that comes with experience and chemistry. So ideally, that should get better as the year goes on. But even aside from that, there were still a ton of mistakes. Like I tweeted out the one clip where it was on 3rd down. And for some reason, the center, Drew Kendall, released off the line like he was going to block for a screen. And then he was out in the middle, essentially of nowhere, and looking around like, oh, I messed up. And like I said, again, this is why teams schedule FCS teams week 1, so they can get these jitters out and it's not as big of a problem. Unfortunately, BC scheduled Rutgers, and just the way the team building came together, that just really came back to bite them.
All right. In our final segment, we're going to get into the underclassmen, the freshmen and redshirt freshmen that really stood out because there was some new names I think that are worth bringing up in terms of building onto next year. Before we do that, though, I want to talk a quick thing here about our YouTube channel. I've set up a goal for our network here that I want to get 600 subscribers on our YouTube page. We gained about 15 last night. We keep doing this. I want 600 subscribers for our show by the start of the basketball season. So if you are listening to this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button now. Just hit it. It takes 2 seconds, makes a big difference. If you are on a podcast platform, do the same thing. Go to youtube.com, look up Locked On Boston College and hit subscribe. Go to yesterday's episode. You can see the comment section is quite interesting. And between Rutgers fans and BC fans just going at it. But we've had some great conversations on there. And, we're doing some fun stuff here on the YouTube channel, including some bonus stuff that should be coming out, especially around recruiting season, that you're going to want to not miss. All right, we are back. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day here on the Locked On Network. And I'm joined by Mitch Wolf, staff writer at Eagle Insider. Mitch, there were so many new names for some BC fans that maybe aren't familiar with some of the underclassmen that popped up during Saturday's game against Rutgers. Who are some of the ones that really kind of caught your eye watching that game?
So I'm going to try to stick to the freshmen as much as I can, and
Sure.
I'll include redshirt freshmen there. And I'm going to start on the defense since we spent most of this show talking about the offense. We'll come back to them. But the first guy I want to highlight is Amari Jackson, who's a true freshman corner who only played 7 snaps yesterday, but he had a really, really big play where it was definitely in the second half, and I can't remember which quarter it was in, but Rutgers was down. This was the drive where Rutgers got their field
It was the
goal.
third quarter because I remember where I was sitting when it happened.
Yes. So they threw a fade ball to their receiver. I believe it was Sean Ryan, I think he's listed at 6'4", 200. And they had Amari Jackson across from him, who's a true freshman playing in his first collegiate action. And I think the Rutgers coaching staff knew the freshman was in because they went after him immediately. And so they throw to this tall receiver in the back of the end zone, and Jackson, I'll say this, he didn't turn around. He didn't try to play the ball, but he really did a nice job of staying in phase, staying in the hip pocket of the receiver, and just not allowing any kind of separation to the point where Ryan caught the ball on a bobble, but by the time he had secured it, he was out of bounds. And what really impressed me is that a true freshman corner getting put in a situation like that, a lot of times they'll panic and just shove the receiver out of bounds and, get flagged for DPI, which might have been what Rutgers was going for. But I was super impressed that he didn't panic. Yeah, and he's, trusted his instincts, trusted his technique, and forced a 4th down on a field goal. So I really love that play from him. Other guys in the defense, Jalen Cheek, another cornerback, came in. He played 15 snaps. And I mean, I'll be honest, I don't remember. He didn't get targeted once, so that means to me at least he played well in coverage. So good for him. It's kind of this is where defensive backs are kind of like refs. The less you hear of them, the better your team is doing.
Right.
Not too many other freshmen played. Jalen Blackwell, guy you mentioned, made some nice plays. I think he's still kind of figuring out what he's going to do in this defense, and I think they're still figuring out how to use him. The one he had the issue that a lot of the linebackers had yesterday is that they were not as aggressive as I would have liked coming downhill against the run, and that's why I think that was a portion of why Rutgers was so successful on the ground. But he did have that big chase down sack of Gavin Wimsatt on 3rd and goal from the 38 or whatever. The two guys on the defensive line, Ty Clemens and Quan Williams. Clemens got a decent amount of run. Again, he's playing a lot of defensive tackle, which strange for me, given that he's listed at only 260 some pounds. Couldn't really make a lot of impact, I think, because Rutgers' offensive line was so big and they just kind of moved him out of the way easily. Similar story with Quan Williams. Again, true freshman playing in his first action. I think a good amount of his snaps came on that final drive. So he was kind of just getting bullied as well. But I think at least on the back end, those two secondary players played really well. And I'll be interested to see how they kind of start training up the freshmen that are on the defensive line.
All right. So now going to the offensive side of the ball, you had of course a couple of running backs that played. We didn't see Joseph Griffin.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeremiah Franklin also played. Kind of talk a little bit about the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I don't think Franklin got any targets, but he was a big part of the offense. When he did come in, they used him in a variety of different ways. They had him. He was aligned as a wide receiver. He was aligned as a slot receiver. He had some inline tight end snaps. I'm trying to pull up his snaps by position right now. I don't think he got any targets, so it's hard to really tell exactly, how open he was, given that we don't have all 22 film yet. But yeah, played all over the field, so that he'll be an interesting player to watch moving forward. Let me see some of these other names. On the offensive line, Drew Kendall, again, he had that big mess up on that play. I mentioned the issues on the interior. He had the bad snap that ended up giving Rutgers the ball inside the 10. So a rough first day for him. You can't really sugarcoat it any other way. I don't think any other freshmen on the line. Let's see. But yeah, running backs. So, we expected a lot from Xavier Coleman. He only took one snap, which was kind of surprising. I think that he did get targeted, but I think Phil missed him on a short flat route, if I remember correctly. But the guy that I am most excited by is Alex Broom, and it's a very, very surprising reason. So Alex Broom, I think he's like 5'8", 180-ish, but I have not seen a BC running back, or many running backs in general, honestly, be that good at pass protection, let alone a true freshman running back. There were 4 plays where he was pass blocking, but every time he knew exactly where to be, and he absolutely stonewalled his guy. And granted, it usually wasn't, a defensive tackle, but it was usually a linebacker, defensive back, but every single time he absolutely stopped them in his tracks. And again, I'm not, the biggest proponent of PFF grades, but he did have the second highest pass blocking grade on the team behind Dwayne Alec, and his grade was Broom's grade was 76.7. The next one behind him was actually Alex Sinkfield, who only had 2 pass blocking snaps, but he got 74.7. So that's good for him. Looks like Barfield, the other freshman running back, had a pass block rep, and he got positively graded, so that's good. So, we talked a lot about, or at least I've talked a lot about Pat Garwo getting better in that phase of his game. I think he struggled a decent bit. He had some times where it looked like he wasn't sure who to block, and then when he did figure it out, he was overmatched by them. So don't love seeing that, but I tweeted out earlier that I'm not sure they're going to be able to keep Barfield as a redshirt this year Broom as a redshirt this year, because they're going to need him on third downs, because he's a great blocker, and I think he can be a decent receiver out of the backfield as well. So, I think we would obviously like, given the depth of the running back room, I'd like to see these younger guys redshirt, but if they want to keep winning games and keep Phil Jurkovec healthy and upright, I think you're going to see Alex Broom take a lot more snaps, especially on third down.
And what's so funny is Pat Garwo is a Steve Adazio recruit, and he's built like one. He's 6'2".
Mm-hmm.
He's a bigger dude.
Yeah, he's like 5. And honestly, like if you've got a short, stocky running back, that's usually great in pass protection because you have that natural leverage, a low center of gravity and all that. But it's just something that he just has really struggled with so far. So I'm not sure that they're gonna keep giving him reps on third down when he's making these kind of mistakes, and that lead to the quarterback getting hit.
But what I was going to say was Barfield and Alex Broom are
Yeah.
both like 5'9", 5'10".
Mm-hmm.
They're
Yeah,
both
it's wild.
really small.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's
Yeah.
and that's been kind of Halfley's theme in terms of recruiting at the running back position. If you kind of look at all the running backs he's landed, they're all not the typical BC brute running backs. You know, he doesn't have many of the physical downhill rushers that you remember with like Andre Williams, and you do need those, but I haven't seen much of them. But it's really interesting to see the smaller guys step up and be able to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Mitch, this is going to wrap up our conversation. Do I dare ask you what your pick is for Virginia Tech on Saturday?
I mean, aside from Maine, there aren't many other teams on BC's schedule this year that I'd like to have them play after this first game. As Virginia Tech lost it on the road to Old Dominion, who is a relatively recent up jump to the FBS. I think BC gets it together and wins this game. I'm not going to give a score, but and again, I said this about Rutgers, but Virginia Tech is really kind of in the depths of it right now. I don't think they really know what to do on offense. Their defense isn't that great either. So I'm hoping that they can get back on the winning column this week. I think Virginia Tech's favored by 3, which is essentially negligible if it was a neutral site to be pick 'em. So I think BC wins. I'm not going to give a score prediction because I don't want to get called out again or anything like that. So, but I think they'll win this one.
You say that as I'm looking at my DMs and I have a Rutgers fan sending GIFs of L's over and over again.
That's fair. That's fair.
I can take it. I think it's funny. So
Yeah.
he thinks I'm getting mad at it. I think it's hilarious. So, yeah, but now you say that, Mitch, you know, that the Virginia Tech blogs are going to, and message boards are going to say, you know, cocky BC fan thinks BC is going to beat Virginia Tech and we're going to get slammed all over again. So,
yeah, well, that's why I'm here.
So Mitch, tell the folks about the post that you're working on for Eagle Insider.
So right now, and now it's mostly been in tweet form at this point, but now I'm working on a series of article, or it's going to be a series that kind of runs through the season where it's essentially called something to the effect of, I rewatched the BC game against insert opponent here, so you don't have to, where I'll kind of try my best to give a breakdown, maybe drive by drive, kind of pick out like a key play on the drive, say like, okay, this was good, or this was really bad. This was a turning point in the game. And like one thing. So, Donovan Azaraku had 2 forced fumbles in this game and BC couldn't recover either. And if they had recovered either of them, they would have gotten the ball, I think, around the 25-yard line. And, fumble luck is very random. So, and it just wasn't in BC's favor on that Saturday. So, they, especially the second one where both Josh DeBerry and Cam Horsley tried to catch the ball and they slammed into each other, and then that allowed a Rutgers guy to recover it. So, like I said, I'm working on that piece for the website that'll kind of break down, this game in whole, and so then you guys as the fans don't have to go back and relive the terror that was this past Saturday, especially the final drive. But other than that, you can follow me at Mitchell T. Wolfe, WOLFE on Twitter. And like I've said before, I'm one of the editors on the fantasy betting side for the 33rd Team, which is a great website for football analysis. We also obviously do a lot of fantasy betting, DFS content. So if you guys are doing any of those games or kind of things, head over there. We've got this new tool called The Edge, which gives you a lot of really great statistics information that can help you be better in all those aspects of sports gaming. So if you guys want to make some money, try to head over there and get yourself some learning.
All right. Thanks, Mitch. And this is AJ Black. You can follow me on Twitter at AJ Black_BC. I'm going to kick off Virginia Tech coverage tomorrow. We're going to have all sorts of insight talking about the game, getting all the what you need to know to get yourself ready for Saturday night's game in Blacksburg. Thank you for following along. Again, go to Eagle Insider right now, become a VIP member. I think you'll enjoy that. And make sure you subscribe. We're still close. We're getting close to that 600 number. Want to get closer by tomorrow. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you again soon.